This is Radio Health Journal. I'm Nancy Benson. This week, is 800 calories a day the magic number to help people lose weight?
It seems to be low enough to lead to very rapid weight loss, but high enough to be sustainable.
Intermittent fasting, when Radio Health Journal returns.
I'm Reed Pence, the producer and host of Radio Health Journal. If you like listening to Radio Health Journal, you'll also like our sister show, Viewpoints, which covers a wide array of topics, from education to history to the environment. Here's a preview of what they're covering this week on Viewpoints.
You stay focused. I mean, if you've left only an hour to do it and your phone rings, well, you don't take the call. And now this thing you don't like is only in your life for 1 hour, not an hour and a half.
The art of productivity. Then,
if I know he had dysentery 5 times, if I know at one point he was riding with a pillow under his butt, now that is exciting stuff.
What you probably didn't know about America's founding father. I'm Marty Peterson.
And I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth this week on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.
Listen to Radio Health Journal and Viewpoints on your favorite radio station, and subscribe and listen anytime on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Also, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Radio Health Journal.
We've all heard the statistics that 2/3 of American adults are either overweight or obese. That means a lot of us have probably just thrown in the towel on yet another New Year's resolution to lose weight. Experts say it didn't used to be nearly this bad. The explosion in obesity didn't really start until the 1980s, when the war on dietary fats went into high gear.
I think one of the greatest problems is that people were encouraged to give up things like eggs and full-fat milk, which turns out to be actually pretty good for you, in favor of low-fat products which were manufactured and which were stuffed full of sugar. And so that is, again, one of the big drivers. As I said, it's all about the fact that we now consume so many processed foods as opposed to natural foods.
That's British physician Dr. Michael Mosley, author of the new book, The Fast 800, who says our waistlines never recovered once carbs and sugar replaced fats in the diet.
Something like 75% of the American diet now consists of processed or ultra-processed foods, and foods which our bodies were just never evolved to cope with, because a lot of them owe their origins to the chemical industry rather than to agriculture. So if you look at, a lot of the foods you can pick up in the supermarket or elsewhere, you'll see a long list of strange ingredients on the side, which bear very little relationship to anything which came out of the ground. And the other thing is that these foods have also been engineered to be unbelievably addictive, so that people, once they start eating them, they don't stop, whether it is chips or chocolate or whatever. So what was once a sort of, a harmless little snack becomes something where you're eating 300 or 400 calories. And if you do that often enough, and you do that throughout the day, then not surprisingly, you start to put on an awful lot of fat, particularly around the tummy. And that's the worst sort of fat.
Mosley says carbs are key in a couple of ways. First, in the mixture that makes processed foods so addictive.
It's a magical formula, a mixture of fat and sugar, which we find almost irresistible. And in my book, The Fast 800, I say that one of the reasons we find this ratio of 2 units of carbs to 1 of fat so irresistible is because it was the first food we ever sampled. Our mother's breast milk is a combination of carbs and fat. And obviously that is super healthy stuff, but it gives us a taste which the food manufacturers have since exploited.
Unfortunately, Mosley says carbs are about the worst kind of food to be addicted to. They're metabolically destructive.
The biggest problem is they raise your blood sugars, more so than fat or protein. Protein does a little bit, but what carbs do is they pump your blood sugars right up. So your body has to respond by producing insulin, which your pancreas does, and that brings it down again. But if you've had a big spike, then your body's had to pump out lots of insulin, and that means you're going to have a crash, which means you're going to feel hungry later. You probably had the experience, if you have sort of sugary cereals for breakfast, you're going to feel starving hungry at 11 o'clock. Whereas if you have, say, eggs on toast or something like that, you're not. Or if you have, I'm particularly fond of a bit of fish for breakfast, which is a very Scandinavian thing, but it keeps me full for a long time. And the other downside with insulin is it's a fat-promoting hormone. What it does is it takes that excess sugar out of your blood and it sticks it in your fat cells as fat. So what insulin does is it promotes fat deposition, and there's a lot of average insulin levels in the U.S. have gone up and up and up over the last 30 or 40 years.
Mosley says that's why diabetes and prediabetes have risen so much over the last few decades.
Nearly half the adult population are either diabetic or pre-diabetic. And that is obviously profoundly bad for your bodies. It increases your risk of heart disease, dementia, cancer, you name it. Having lots of sugar running around your system, which kind of sounds like a good thing, is a really, really bad thing.
Mosley says crash diets are also a really bad thing, but that's how most people try to lose weight. What works out much better, he says, is a daily intake of about 800 calories. It works as well, and you can maintain it.
800 calories is low, but not super low. It seems to be low enough to lead to very rapid weight loss and other desirable changes, but high enough to be sustainable and also to give you all the nutrients you need. The problem with the old crash diets is because the nutrient content was very poor. They tended to be about 300 or 400 calories. There was no program, no plan for what you would do afterwards. As I said, this particular approach, 800 calories, but really full of the right nutrients, it has been tested in a lot of people, and it has been spectacularly successful. When we did a program testing it against a standard weight loss, following people for a year, people who did this, they lost and kept off an average of 22 pounds. Those following standard weight loss advice lost and kept off, I think it was 2 pounds. So there was a dramatic difference in the groups.
Then Mosley advises following a 5 and 2 schedule. Eat normally 5 days a week and follow the 800 calorie a day diet the other 2. But he says for similar reasons, it's also a good idea to turn our hourly meal schedule on its head as well. You may recall the old advice to eat small meals more often than 3 times a day to keep our blood sugar from dropping. Mosley says that is a bad idea.
The reality is all the research shows that if you have lots of snacks, you actually eat more, not only when you're snacking, but also at the next meal. So snacking just leads to overall calorie consumption. But it also means your blood sugars are going to be constantly raised, constantly topped up. Your poor old pancreas is constantly working to bring those blood sugars down, because having high levels of blood sugar is profoundly bad for your body. Everyone knows that now. And so that's what snacking has done. But the other thing is that we're just eating all the time. Most people start eating within 20 minutes and wake you up and they have a snack before they go to bed. And your body needs rest from constant calorie input, because what it needs to do is it needs to get on with essential repairs.
Giving the body time to repair is only one reason for intermittent fasting.
There seem to be lots of health advantages to be had from extending your overnight fast. So the idea of time-restricted eating is you might stop eating at, say, 7 o'clock at night, and then you don't eat again until 9 o'clock the next morning, and that is a 14-hour fast. You basically had 14 hours without food in your system, and that leads to major fat burning, and it also leads generally to better sleep. And the other benefit is it switches on something called autophagy, where your body clears out all the junk, all the old rubbish cells, leaving room. It's like a good old spring clean. And that only happens when you're not eating, you're not digesting, you're not doing all those things.
You can find out more about Dr. Michael Mosley and the Fast 800 through a link on our website, radiohealthjournal.org. Our studio producer is Jason Dickey. I'm Nancy Benson.
Radio Health Journal returns in just a moment.
Most primary care doctors expect to see more people with dementia over the next 5 years, but a new survey shows half of them don't think the medical profession is ready. Primary care physicians are on the front lines of dementia care, but nearly a third are never or only sometimes comfortable answering patient questions about it. Nearly 2 in 5 say they're never or only sometimes comfortable making a diagnosis. That's deeply concerning to Dr. Joanne Pike, Chief Program Officer of the Alzheimer's Association.
We're heading toward a medical emergency when it comes to ensuring dementia care will be available for all who need it. It's critical that stakeholders work together to reverse the shortage of dementia care specialists and enhance dementia care education for primary care providers.
The survey is part of the Alzheimer's Association 2020 Alzheimer's Disease Facts and Figures Report, which finds that, barring medical breakthroughs, the number of people with Alzheimer's dementia may nearly triple in the next 30 years. Find out more at alz.org.
A new study shows that increasing the number of steps you walk each day can have significant health benefits. Researchers followed middle-aged people for 9 years and found that those who walked the most steps per day had a 43% lower risk of diabetes and a 31% lower risk of high blood pressure compared to those who took the fewest steps. Women with the highest step count were 61% less likely to be obese. Among the men in the study, there was no association between steps taken and obesity risk. Dr. Amanda Paluch of the University of Massachusetts was lead author of the study.
Walking is a widely accessible form of physical activity, and steps per day is an easy measurement and motivator. Accumulating steps throughout the day is a less daunting way to be more active than, say, a daily extended exercise routine. Every step can help to make a difference.
Researchers now want to see if walking speed can impact heart health risks. The study was presented last week at the American Heart Association's Epidemiology and Prevention Lifestyle and Cardiometabolic Health Scientific Sessions 2020.
And that's Radio Health Journal for this week. Radio Health Journal is a production of MediaTrax Communications. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more, and check Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify for a library of past programs. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and information about our guests at radiohealthjournal.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Radio Health Journal.
Coming up next week on Radio Health Journal.
OBGYNs historically did not get any training in psychiatry. So when you were pregnant or lactating, where did you go? And a lot of women survivors will describe really having felt abandoned or in a place where they felt like nobody wanted to care for them.
Improving treatment for perinatal depression.
Then, will fighting coronavirus really change public policy?
These very divisive, long-argued issues are not going to change because of this epidemic. I could see some people thinking, oh, it's a tail wagging the dog.
All that and more on Radio Health Journal.